The countdown is on. College football season inching closer and closer. Of course, we're going to get that official number as always. Hello, everybody. Another edition of Summer Ball. All things college football. A little catch-up session, we like to call it here. And today is episode 4. That's right. We already got 3 installments in the bank. We already hit on the big dogs, the Big 12 or the Big 10, the SEC, and of course, we did our college football realignment to kick things off with all of the changes that are happening in college football. And a lot is going on in the Big 12 when it comes to change as well. And that's the conference that we're going to tackle right here, right now. I am Sean Brace, joined as always by the big brains, Ryan Beef Coyle. Beef, what's the number?
53 days from today, we will have kickoff.
How about it? All right, 53 days from today, college football will be kicking off in Ireland. Once again, Florida State and Georgia Tech. Our returning champion, Joe Tansey. Hello, sir.
What's going on? We are Mark Simino days away from the season starting.
Ooh, nice pull by you on that one. Well, boys, Big 12, a lot to discuss. But I do want to say perfect timing here as our first football media preseason poll for the Big 12 was just released today. Curious if I had to ask you guys right here, right now, who do you think the number one team is? And if you saw it, so be it. Do you agree with it? But who would you say number one team preseason poll? You know how much that means. Beef, go ahead.
I probably would have thought it was Kansas State.
Okay.
I think they got a little bit more juice, but especially with Utah coming into the conference this year, I thought maybe, they wouldn't have been popped up as number one, but definitely less sexy of a conference than what we've talked about in the SEC and Big 10 so far with your 2 biggest brands in Texas and Oklahoma leaving. So it's time for someone in football now to kind of, take over that conference after those teams for at least my lifetime have dominated that league.
Tansey, if you had to guess.
It's Colorado, right?
Well played. Utah just barely edged out Kansas State, 906 to 889.
That means nothing.
Means absolutely nothing. But let's go ahead and start off with that, Joe. The changes, of course, with the addition of the teams.
Who's actually in the Big 12?
There you go. Exactly. But, and obviously losing the big brands. And, it's crazy. Like I saw ESPN broadcasting live from Austin and the Hook'em Horns, and they had this huge display. And, this is a huge deal for the Big 12 to lose Texas and Oklahoma. And then now, you got to replace them with Utah and what we have with Cincinnati going on. And, of course, Arizona State, UCF, I believe, is a new addition too, correct?
No, those were all last year. UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU were last year.
That's right. Okay.
The four corners, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado are the new ones.
So this conference up for grabs in your mind, Joe? Where do they go right from the jump here as far as Big 12 is concerned?
I think in terms of conference parity, the Big 12 is probably going to be the most exciting. I think this can go all sorts of different ways. And it has, right? Over the past few years, we've seen Texas and Oklahoma, but they've gone through their struggles, right? So you've seen Iowa State have success. You've seen Kansas State have success. You've seen Oklahoma State have success and then lose when it matters the most because Mike Gundy telegraphs how his seasons go every year. But if you look at this conference as a whole, I mean, it's really exciting and fascinating because you have a bunch of teams that I think are on level playing ground in terms of where they have been historically. Basketball, it's going to be one hell of a conference. I can't wait for that. You have Houston, Arizona, and Kansas all in one basketball conference. It's going to be phenomenal. But I think there's all sorts of different ways you can approach the Big 12 in football in 2024 because over the last decade, Utah has been one of the most established powers in the Pac-12. They're consistent. They're not sexy, but they're consistent. They play tough defense. Their offense, when it's good, is good. And I think Kansas State's kind of a mirror program in the way they're not flashy. They play hard-nosed defense, and when their offense ends up getting right, it looks fun to watch. Colin Klein, Darren Sproles, you can name some pretty exciting players that played there, but they're not the first team that comes to mind, right? So I think in the Big 12, there's going to be a lot of exciting games. There's a lot of exciting teams. I mean, how Kansas is good for the first time in a long time. They have actual, I guess, top 20 expectations. You could say the same thing about Arizona. So I think there's a lot of fun and a lot of intrigue within the Big 12 this year.
Beef right now, Big 12 championship game winner listed odds right here on DraftKings Sportsbook. Utah plus 320, Kansas State plus 380, OK State plus 750, which dealt with some drama today with their star running back, reportedly, allegedly pulled over for DUI. UCF 9-1, Kansas 9-1, Iowa State 10-1. When I talk about the voting from the media perspective and, of course, the odds, what stands out to you?
I mean, the news today with Ollie Gordon and what potentially comes from that is a big one, because we talked about, I think, even in our first episode, I know Joe highlighted it, but he said Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 was something that stuck out to him. And I agree. They have 5 returning fifth-year offensive linemen, and that was one of the major calling cards last year with Florida State. Their offensive line retention from the year before was pretty unreal. And to have 5 guys to be projected starters that are fifth-year players with arguably the best running back in the country as well, that's a pretty good winning formula kind of right there in itself. So Oklahoma State sitting there at plus 750 is definitely an intriguing number for me. But the news potentially with a suspension or whatever that could happen to Gordon, you would assume that if anything does come of that, it would be in the early portion of the season. But that can knock you down just a few pegs, enough to really kind of derail your season. So that's going to be one of the major storylines I think we follow between now and kickoff. Colorado at 30-1. You're going to see a lot of tweets, a lot of bets placed for that, and a lot of money getting thrown basically out the window with them. ESPN, Fox, all the broadcast networks are going to be pushing them very hard. I think I saw that they're the 16th ranked team in NCAA football coming out in a couple weeks, but I don't think it's going to be much different than last year. I do think a bowl game's in reach, but anybody betting them to win the Big 12, make the playoff, whatever, I think that you rather just kind of light your money on fire at that point.
30-1, Joe. I'm going to come right back to you on Colorado here. 30-1 to win the championship game once again on Big 12 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Should we, again, at the end of the day, we don't want to be entertained, and I thought Colorado did entertain us for a few games to open up the season.
They couldn't play defense.
Was it over the top? Absolutely. But, of course, you know what you get with Deion Sanders. That's exactly who he's always been. And now he's got his kids, and, of course, his quarterback is a real deal. The kid's a stud. They have some real good players. Should we take them a little bit more seriously this year, Joe, in your mind?
I don't know how seriously you can take them right now, right? Because that defense was just a disaster last season. I mean, sure, look, they have offense. They've got some great individual talent. But if you can't play defense in a league where Utah, Kansas State, Iowa State, there's 3 teams right there. Oklahoma State plays some really good defense as well. You're going to get into shootouts really quick, and you can only win so many of them. Yes. Can they be interesting? Sure. Will they be talked about? Absolutely. I mean, look, they're in prime time on NBC and CBS 2 of the first 3 weeks, at Nebraska and at Colorado State. I think that's the first time Colorado State has been on a national TV network, like one of the big ones.
Hey, that game last year was a banger.
Right. So that's going to be fascinating that they're under the spotlight right away. I don't know. It is what it is. They'll at least make it interesting. But I will say North Dakota State has been, I think, for at least 3 months now, the popular week 1 upset pick over Colorado. I don't know if we can call that a popular pick or an upset pick anymore, because everybody's on it. Like come week 1, everybody's going to be on that. I would actually, and this has nothing to do with today's news, just because of this is just how Mike Gundy operates. Bookmark this. It's July 2nd. South Dakota State has a better chance of upsetting Oklahoma State in week 1 than North Dakota State does Colorado.
Really? Ooh, why you feel so passionately about that one? Because
I mean, look, they're an FCS powerhouse too, right?
Yeah.
And they've actually been better than NDSU. They've been the better of the two Dakota
Villanova
schools
last year. Yeah.
Yeah. They have a really good running system. Like, so they can counter, they can keep the ball, they can counter what Oklahoma State does. It's July 2nd. I'm out here making hot takes, but I think that's the more spicy one. Look, Colorado, sure, it is what it is. People are going to have been saying that for 3 months. But I think the more surprising one would be South Dakota State going into Stillwater and winning.
North Dakota State did release a pretty good hype video as they were walking out to the Morgan Wallen. Broadway Girls song. Did you see that video? Beef, I'm sure it came across your timeline. Beef, over to you. We talk a lot about the 12-team playoff throughout the course of these shows. Is there an avenue for Utah? Is there an opening for multiple teams in this conference? How do you see this one playing out as far as the 12-team playoff representation from the Big 12 conference?
I think with the Big 12, it's going to be a 2-team max going out of this. It reminds me of the Big 12 in basketball last year, where it's like these teams at the top are going to like cannibalize themselves, where it's like no one will be an 11-1 or a 12-0 probably, but you will have, maybe 2 teams that are 10-2, but then the rest of them kind of 9-3, 8-4. Like, you win those games that are kind of the coin flip games, you win them at home. That's going to take out kind of your chances at having one of those elite squads. So I'd say probably a 2-team max. I mean, the odds right now really favor Utah and Kansas State to potentially get there. Haven't dove into all their schedules yet, but Kansas, I think we can make an argument, might have the best player in the conference with Jalen Daniels, but he hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy for a full season. He's missed time each of the past few years, but if he is able to stay healthy, I don't think there's any reason that they can't be a 9-3, 10-2 squad. Arizona, coming off what they did last year, I know it's a new head coach in there now, but they were a very impressive team, especially down the stretch. Even a team like West Virginia, they played some really good ball last year as well. I think that they went 9-4. And Neil Brown entered the year last year. Seat was really hot. So as a team that has a chance to make a big time statement in week 2 when Penn State comes to Morgantown. So I think Joe said it best at the beginning that this league, I think, is going to give us a lot of parity, a lot of fun. And I think it's going to be the league that kind of shows us the most upsets as well. Like, won't be surprised if, a Baylor does go to a Kansas State and knocks them off or something. It's going to be one of those any given Saturday type of leagues, because I don't think we really have a true top dog in this conference.
I slightly disagree with your comment about Daniels being the best player in the conference, only because Teteroa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, exists. He is electric. He's a projected top 10 pick. I think he's the best individual in terms of like NFL draft talent.
Even over Hunter?
Ooh, he's nasty.
Yeah. See, we're already completely forgetting about Colorado. But I would say even in, if you're going to say individual, I'd say Travis Hunter then. And then put McMillan and Daniels and Ollie Gordon kind of in that collection. Look, it's not to say Daniels is a bad player. He's absolutely electric. It's probably top 5. I would say if you were to give out a Big 12 player of the year, I mean, you could make a case going into preseason. At least, 5 or 6 guys deserve that honor. You can throw Shedeur Sanders in there too, because he's going to get a lot of draft recognition. But I think the 2 Colorado kids, McMillan, Daniels, Ollie Gordon, I'm sure there's a few others. I mean, this league is loaded with talent, and that's why the parity is going to be a real thing.
KJ Jefferson coming in too to play quarterback at UCF. I think that's going to be interesting with what they did with Plumlee. I think that's a step up. And to see them at 9-1 to win the conference, that stuck out to me for sure.
KJ Jefferson.
I'm a KJ Jefferson fan. At least watching him play, I think he's a fun watch. But he is a guy that should be looking at the LinkedIn portal maybe instead of the college football portal.
I agree.
Joe, back over to you, because we do have a bad job by me, week 1 spreads or week 2 spreads, but we do have opening week spreads here on DraftKings. First of all, South Dakota State catching 8 against OK State. That's a 3 p.m. kick. And then also on the 31st, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, August 31st. And also, Joe, perfectly teed up for you, Penn State and West Virginia here, 10.5, as Beef just pointed out. Noon kickoff in Morgantown. Upset alert.
That's a disservice to the fine people of Morgantown, West Virginia.
For kicking off at noon?
Making them go inside at noon on probably the nicest football Saturday they'll get.
Yes. Any shot though? Any shot that's because that's crazy. If look, and I'm only bringing it up because Beef said they had a good season last year.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation, like if West Virginia was to beat Penn State, I just think that kind of sends some shockwaves, like ripples through college football. I don't know.
For sure, but they couldn't move the ball on them last year. I mean, they played well towards the end of the season, but that opener against Penn State, they couldn't move the ball.
Yeah,
they could not do anything, and they still have the same quarterback back in Garrett Green. I wouldn't put too much stock in it. It's an interesting spread, though.
Yeah.
I'd probably, I mean, the over is 50.5. I'd probably hammer the under on that one. It's just, I don't completely get it with Neil Brown. I think he's got one of the more dramatic home and road splits. I think if I remember correctly, you bet him at home, but you fade him when West Virginia's on the road, type of guy. I don't know. West Virginia they just don't do anything for me as a whole. And there are a few teams like that in the Big 12 that'll be that way. I'm sure they'll be good. It's just when I look at a college football Saturday, West Virginia is probably in the 50s or 60s of must-watch teams.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that will be number one though, because Penn State's playing, so you're gonna have to watch it in your household. Anyways, with the Heisman Trophy odds in front of us, only the first three names representing the Big 12. Avery Johnson Daniels from Kansas at 35-1. Avery is 25-1, and Shedeur Sanders also at 35-1 to win the Heisman. Any flyer?
Noah Fafita at plus 4,000 from Arizona is very interesting. Arizona is interesting because they go through the coaching change. I believe it's Brent Brennan, the head coach from San Jose State. He's a former Arizona player, so it's kind of like Mark Pope going back to Kentucky, where he's not the biggest name replacement, but it means a lot for him to be there. So I'm interested to see how that first month goes with Arizona, because they could be a player in this. I mean, look, Travis Hunter at plus 6,000, Ollie Gordon at plus 7,500. Look, Colorado is not going to be good. They're not projected to be good. But I think in this case, because he's probably a top 5 individual in college football, like what happens if Colorado wins 7 or 8 games and they're in the mix in November? I don't know. You know, he's worth a shot. I think Gordon at 7,500. I said this at the start of when we did this, is very much worth a flyer, because if he's healthy, he's running for close to about 1,500, 2,000 yards. And Oklahoma State's always there. It depends on how things break for them. They have to go to K-State, but they get Utah at home. It's not a terrible schedule after that. They get Utah. I can tell you right now how Oklahoma State's going to go, because I've seen this every year. They play Utah and Kansas State back-to-back in September, so they're going to go at least 1-1. They're not going to win both of those games, and then they're going to fly completely off the radar for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then come like mid-November, we're going to be like, oh, Oklahoma State's 13th in the country? Oh, that's not new. They do that every year. But I can just tell you how it's going to go.
No, I believe you on that one. It does seem like these things, certainly play out the same way every single year. One of those, I guess, not so much cliche, but one of those certainties, let's just put it that way, is you never want to bet against Utah at home. And of course, with the expectations there this year, Beef, is that we following suit again this year. Again, they are favored to win the Big 12, and the media poll put them out there today. Cam Rising returning for his 19th season as a starting quarterback for Utah. Is this the same home field advantage? Of course, just in a new conference this year.
Yeah, I think you could say that. Utah is the most expected team, I think, every week. You know what you're going to get from them. You know that they throw all the cliches out. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play good defense. They're going to be well coached. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. Last year, I think they went 8-5, but they did that with a rotating cast of characters at quarterback. Rising coming back should at least solidify that, give them some more play, outside playmaking type of ability, and some more just stability there at the quarterback spot that could elevate them, could make them the team in the Big 12 this year. I think you still kind of follow the same mantra: don't bet against Utah at home. But with Rising coming back, I'm interested to see, because football is a very different sport than many. Like, you only get so many game reps. It's going to be an adjustment for a guy to sit out an entire season last year, because it's not like pickup basketball where you can kind of just go out there and play. You have to be out there in the fire. So Utah might be a team that you look to fade. Maybe, I don't know off the top of my head, the first few games, maybe fade them like the first few games while Rising gets back on his feet. Not sure what their non-con looks like, but that's going to be something to watch, how he looks coming off entire year missed of football.
I think between him and Keefe have about 1,000 years of college football experience between them two. The tight end, he's been around forever too.
Utah, no Florida to open up this year. Instead, they got Southern Utah coming to Utah on August the 29th. Then they go to Baylor on Baylor comes to Utah on September 7th. Then they go to Utah State on September 14th, and then Oklahoma State on the road on September 21st. So those are their first 4 games. Any value there in your mind, Beef, as you just pointed out, possibly to fade in those first couple games? Baylor or Southern Utah, Baylor, Utah State, Oklahoma State.
Well, Baylor is going to be interesting because Dave Aranda, he needs to come out and have a good year to save his job. But then Utah State today, they just announced that their coach is on administrative leave, but it doesn't sound like he will be returning. So that's a team where here we are. They're probably 65 days away from that game or so. And they're just throwing in a new head coach. I think it's a defensive coordinator stepping up, but I saw today that the Utah State head coach was also the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. So
whatever the number on Utah ends up being, that'll probably come out 2 days before, because they play an FCS school. Whatever the number on Utah is, I will gladly take that. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the opener. On the 14th, whatever that number opens at against Utah State, I'll probably gladly take it as well, because that's going to be a big transition. And Utah State's got to go to USC the week before. Yeah, I'll gladly fade them.
All right. Beef, back over to you. Talk to me about transfers. Is there a team that dominated in this conference that, was top dog when it comes to getting the all-important transfers in the portal? I was reading some things that, let's see here, BYU ended up getting a few names. TCU ended up getting a few names. Did all right. Houston as well. Is there a team that really shined in the transfer portal for the Big 12 in your mind?
I'd spin it as not a team that dominated in the transfer portal, but a team that dominated in roster retention. I know Arizona kept a pretty good amount of that nucleus from last year, and I think it was kind of expected when Jed Fish left from Arizona to go to Washington that a lot of those guys would follow suit. I think a lot of them entered the portal but kind of came back. I mean, the quarterback's back, the receiver's back that Joe was talking about, and that was a team down the stretch. Nobody wanted to play them. I think against the spread as well, that they were awesome. I want to say they were
one of the best teams against the spread.
Yeah, I want to say 10-3 against the spread last year.
Yeah, something like that.
11-2. So that's even as more important, I think, potentially, as who you bring in from the transfer portal, who you lose, but ultimately who you keep. And for you to be able to keep your key guys, especially with your head coach departing for another program, that's even bigger. So I think Arizona could be kind of the big winner with that. And then Colorado, with everyone that they basically told, get walking, and brought in, I think it was over 35 different transfers this year. So another team that kind of the opposite of Arizona, where no real roster retention, except their two best players there, Hunter and Sanders.
I think Daquan Finn at Baylor might be the most impactful transfer coming from Toledo, their dual threat quarterback. That's a nice get for Baylor in the transfer portal. KJ Jefferson's a decent one at UCF, but his stock, I guess it's okay because of where Arkansas ended up last year. But I think Daquan Finn is a very fascinating one at Baylor because, like you said, Dave Aranda's on the hot seat, came over as LSU's DC and really hasn't gotten that team after his first season in charge to where that program needs to be.
That year. It's wild.
Right. And then he hasn't done anything since. So, I mean, it's how things change, right?
Yep.
Arizona 6-1 to make the college football playoff. Anybody biting on that?
I think it's a little bit of a little bit of too steep of a climb because the coach is making a big jump. It's like the JMU coach is going into Indiana. I think maybe in a few years Indiana could become relevant, but Arizona's coach hasn't coached at this level yet, so it's probably a number that I won't be jumping at. But I think like we said at the beginning, this is going to be a conference of parity. So if you want to take a shot on a dark horse there, Arizona has the roster to do it. It's just kind of a little bit of the question marks with the coaching staff right now.
I'm going to say no because look at their schedule. I mean, they open Big 12 play at K-State and at Utah. I mean, that's tough. I mean, that could be 2 losses right on the board. I think if you want anything with Arizona, you got to make sure they can win one or both of those games, right? Because that puts you at 2 losses if you lose those 2 games, and you're pretty much out of the picture. And you have to be flawless at that point. So that's a tough sell. I think they'll be fine talent-wise. I think San Jose State, I think, was one of the more underrated programs over the last few years. So I think they'll be okay in terms of coaching, but in terms of schedule, man, I mean, that's 2 tough humps to get over right away.
To the favorite, Utah is plus 220 to make the playoff. That's a decent number. Anybody taking a flyer on that?
You said yes. Utah plus 220?
Plus 220 to make the playoff on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah, I mean, to win the Big 12, they're plus 320. So, I mean, if you think that they're going to make the playoff, I think I would probably just bet them at plus 320 instead, because you get the automatic ticket then.
Have to, yeah.
I'd like to present a candidate that we haven't even mentioned.
Go for it.
The Iowa State Cyclones.
Jeez. Talk to me.
So we've gone through this cycle, right, with Matt Campbell, where he was the coach, right? Everybody wanted to hire him, and he stayed at Iowa State 1 year too long, and then his resume has soured, right? So now you have an Iowa State team that looked pretty decent last year, and Rocco Becht was one of the better young quarterbacks in the country. Now that you have the experience under him, I don't think Iowa State is getting any love at all in the Big 12.
Yep.
I think they could make a decent amount of noise. I mean, look at their schedule. The tough games they have to play are in November. They go at Kansas, at Utah, and they host K-State. So they'll go through the ringer. But, I mean, the Iowa road trip can be a crapshoot in how they play them every year. So it's not like nothing new is going to be there. I could very much see Iowa State in the playoff picture as we get into November.
Tell you what, I have multiple articles open in front of me, and there is 0 mentions of the Cyclones. 0.
There's always one team every year in the Big 12 that pops up out of nowhere.
And it could be.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess you could call it out of nowhere because they're not in that top 4, but they came on strong at the end of the year last year. And Matt Campbell's still one hell of a coach. I think we just soured on him after 1 or 2 bad years in Ames.
No one had, I mean, when you're talking about teams coming out of nowhere, no one had West Virginia as 9-4 last year. I think many people had Neil Brown fired, expecting it to be like a 4-8, 5-7 year. So if Iowa State has a 9-4 year, I think people in Ames are kind of doing backflips there as well, because that's a very successful season for a program like that.
And I think nobody expected Arizona last year to make that big of a step. I think they expected progress under Jed Fish, but I don't think they expected that big of a step. And Kansas kind of falls into that category as well. But I think going into the season, Kansas is going to be the team that everybody hypes up in the Big 12. And for the first time since the Mangino era, I think they have legitimate expectations.
That's a great pull. Great name. Great pictures, visuals, just thinking about that big man in the Orange Bowl. Let's talk about some teams that, again, we haven't really hit on too much. And they had a lot of success, maybe not as recent, but TCU was just in a championship game a few years ago. Of course, Cincinnati had their run as well. We already talked a little bit about Baylor and Houston. They're always all the way at the bottom as well. But what happened to those programs? Is it just they were one and dones, or is it possible that TCU and Cincinnati maybe get it going again here.
I think those are all affected by, well, a few of them were coaching changes. I think at Houston, everything soured with Holgerson pretty fast. Willie Fritz is coming in from Tulane. He's a hell of a coach, but that's going to probably take a year or two. I think Cincinnati's in that where they dipped after Fickle left, and now they're back on the upswing. I think TCU just caught lightning in a bottle. They've kind of just been perennial, like 7-8 win team. Them being in the championship game isn't usually where they're at. They've caught lightning in a bottle, I think, twice when it comes to being in the national spotlight, but being in the middle of the Pac-12, the Big 12 is kind of just where they're used to being.
And you look at the year that TCU did have the good year. It wasn't that Venable's first year, and then Sark's second year. I think Texas was like 5-7. Oklahoma was 6-6 or something. So the two premier teams in the league were kind of, in a rebuild and a reboot. And like Joe said, caught lightning in a bottle, had their best year. And then I won't say last year showed their true colors more, but you look at their win total this year, 7.5. They're, an 8-win, 9-win team pretty historically, consistently when you look back at them.
Yeah, I mean, some of these teams just catch lightning in a bottle. It just happens.
I am intrigued to see one team that you didn't mention, Brace, what BYU kind of looks like, because I thought they would have been at least a little bit more of a better transition, because historically they're pretty good on the lines. I thought they kind of just got outclassed, with athletes last year. I'm interested to see with what they kind of did this offseason if they're able to come over a little bit better. They're projected to finish 13th in the poll, it says. But they have the worst odds to win the conference at 120-1. I haven't looked at the schedule yet, but when I think BYU, I thought that was, a program that was just kind of stable, like a, 7-8 win on a good year, a 9-win type of team. A really poor first year in the Big 12. Interested to see what they look like this year. And it surprised me to see them all the way at the bottom there at 120-1 to win the conference.
Well, I'll tell you what, they got some really good legendary look throwback jerseys that they're pulling out this year from 1996. It does look good. To me, honestly, they all look the same, but they say they're different. They are popping off the page. Let's put it that way. Look, just having this conversation, this is the fun part, and maybe it's not easy for people to grab onto just hearing it, but seeing these teams and of course hearing the thought process behind a lot of these teams, it could very well be a crazy conference, a crazy year for this conference.
Oh, it's going to be a crazy conference. There's no ifs that it will be. This is the chaos conference. I mean, look at Big 12 of past. I mean,
chaos conference. I like that.
I mean, how many years has it been that way, right? I mean, sure, Texas and Oklahoma have been at the top, but I mean, you could turn on a Big 12 game pretty much every week between from October to December, and you're getting at least 150-45, some crazy scoreline. Like that's it. It's not as, I guess it's not as dramatic as how bad the Pac-12 was in certain instances, because the Pac-12, it had its own thing. It was after dark. Just a lot of weird things happened once the clock struck midnight on the East Coast. But the Big 12, I mean, this has been the league of shootouts, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield game, the Michael Crabtree game. You name, there's been a lot of really high-scoring games in this conference. So I think it's perfect that it added 4 Pac-12 teams, because it's going to be the league of parity and also the league of chaos.
Yeah, we just
talked about it too, where 2021 Baylor won the Big 12. Since then, they've gone, I think, 7-6, 3-9. 2022, TCU goes to the national title game, but they don't even win the conference. They lose at the goal line to Kansas State.
Yep.
And then last year you have the resurgence of Texas, and then Texas and Oklahoma leave. Like there's, just a 3-year window for you of some absolute chaos. So I do think it's going to be a fun one, and definitely the most kind of like any given Saturday type of league where we're going to see, a team that's a 14-point favorite, Baylor hosting, I don't know, BYU or something on a Saturday at 3:30, and BYU goes in there and wins himself by 2 touchdowns. Like we're going to see like crazy scenarios like that throughout the whole season.
Absolutely.
All right, last one, because we didn't even mention this team's name, I don't believe, but you brought it up with Crabtree. Win total 8.5. The Red Raiders, Texas Tech.
Wow.
Is their win total really 8.5?
That's what I'm seeing right here.
It's a big number to me.
2024.
That's a big one. 8.5.
See if I'm double check me on that one. Double check my math on that one, please. That's what I'm reading on this one. Again, I'm not seeing the exact number on DraftKings, but
I see 3 losses on their schedule immediately.
Arizona,
Iowa State, and Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
Texas 7.5 on DraftKings. I apologize. -120.
That's still high, man. So look, Texas Tech came in with all this rah-rah with Joey McGuire being a Texas guy. He's come up through the ranks in Texas and he's taken the job and run with it. But they just haven't, I don't know if 8 wins in a deeper Big 12. I mean, they got to be damn near perfect at home, which they can be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you know what?
You seeing it?
It's not crazy. It's just their road schedule is tough because they play 7 games at home, but they have to go to Arizona. They go to Wazoo, which is going to be a crapshoot. That Texas Tech, Washington State, 10 o'clock on the first September Saturday of the year. That's got chaos written all over it. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I can see it, but gut reaction says no.
Okay. Well, Beef and Joe, look, we hit on a little bit of everything here at this Big 12 conference. And to be honest with you, going into these summer ball sit downs, I thought it was only 2 conferences, but here it is. We struck a chord and got the excitement going for some Big 12 action. Not going to lie to you. And putting Colorado to the side, just discussing all the other teams there and, you know, what Utah's able to do and all the additions of these new teams here. So really exciting stuff. Before we get out of here, though, just a quick thought on anything new in the college football landscape. I know we already hit on the Big 12 or the SEC and everything along those lines. It seems like what's being dominated right now on the timeline is this college football PlayStation game. That's all that's being discussed. The rankings. I got Kirk Herbstreit pumping it. It's going.
Hold on a second. You this college football PlayStation game?
First of all,
all right, old man.
You know why I say that? Because it's not, you can't play it on my PlayStation 4. I got to go out and buy a new PlayStation just to play this freaking game, and I'm not going to do that. And I'm bummed by that. I'm not going to lie to you. I would have bought it if I could play it on the PlayStation, my old school PlayStation.
This is just old man yells at cloud. You
have the PlayStation 5, Beef.
I have a PlayStation. The last PlayStation I bought was 3.
Yeah, I have a 3.
All right. Well, there it is. I'm pissed. I want to play the new game.
And NCAA 14 with Denard Robinson works on
this just feels like you wanting to open the complaint window here, sir.
No, I am complaining about that. That's not compatible with the PlayStation 4. Damn you. But and you know, look, it is pretty cool, but it's just dominating, and it's like, all right, like I get it. It's a really cool deal that it's coming back, and it's got a lot of people all fired up, and it's going to be different than Madden and all that. So that's cool. But I am jealous that I can't play it.
Okay, you started off by like old man yells at cloud type thing there. And I was like, oh, no, we're not going to do this tonight.
Wait a minute. You're talking to the guy that calls. I've been trying to get my wife to go to the movies to see the Monkey movie. I don't know what the hell the name of it is. You know what I mean when I say the Monkey movie. Planet of the Apes. Whatever. Yeah, that thing. I'm like, you know what? It's how I operate. Yeah. The college football game, the Monkey movie.
Sometimes it was just an empty ball rattling around in your head.
That's it. Yes.
I mean, that's just how Sean Brace's brain works.
Exactly.
Stay off the weed, kids.
Stay off the weed. All right. Well, Utah once again seems to be the top of everybody's mind when it comes to this conference. The college football 25 official team rankings, they have them listed at number 10. Too high? No, I kid. We're not going down that path. But look, it's going to be pretty cool to see that game come out. And matter of fact, we're trying to do stuff with our friends over at the Philadelphia Union and their esports hub that they have inside the stadium. So maybe we can get a little tournament going once everybody gets going as far as college football with the new game coming out here. All right, final thoughts, Big 12 edition. Joe, I hand it over to you, sir.
I think we just hit on like a few different dark horses, right? Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon to win Heisman. Iowa State, very intriguing. I think the theme of this conference is just expect the unexpected. It has been for quite some time, but maybe that's been shrouded by the presence of Texas and Oklahoma. I think, but in reality, this has been the chaos conference for quite some time, and I think we will see that out in the wide open this season.
And Beef?
Avery Johnson, quarterback at Kansas.
The point guard of the Spurs.
Right.
Yeah.
Sports. They're not CBS Sports now.
But no, he's going to be one of the breakout players in college football this year. He got some time last year in there at quarterback for Kansas State behind Will Howard when he missed some time as well. He had one game where he rushed for 90 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's going to be one of the more electric players. And Andy Staples, who does great college football work for On3, he got some pre-release access to the new NCAA football game. And he said, by the end of this year, everyone's going to be playing with Kansas State because that's how fast they made Avery Johnson, like a Mike Vick, Lamar Jackson type player. So he's going to be an interesting watch. Not so sure about his passing right now, but might be like kind of a Milroe situation from last year. But the legs are there to begin with. So very excited to watch him and see what he develops into at the college level.
All right. Quickly, a couple thoughts here, or a couple comments. Excuse me. First, Nick checking in. Shout out, Nick. Rocco Beck, Heisman, buy stock now, boys. Ohio State. We in?
It's Iowa State. Yeah, I'll buy in.
Sorry. Iowa State. Excuse me.
I'm not allowed to mention the OH around here after how much I praised them last week.
Jeez, yeah.
I got off of here and got so much crap for praising that team in Columbus.
H checking in my opinion, PlayStation 2 is when video games were in their prime. That was a long time ago, H. God bless you. He also had a comment here. He said, this one is for you guys. Do you think the committee will put a certain number of teams, obviously we know how this is going to work, a certain number of teams from the SEC into the playoff due to a harder schedule, or do they just take the teams ranked 1 through 12 into the playoff regardless of conference? Isn't this already there's 2 at large, right?
No.
7 at large.
7 at large.
7 at large. So
4 conferences, the highest rated group of 5, and then
7 at large.
7 at large. All right. So
there will be at least 3 teams from the SEC and the Big Ten, but that's just because those teams are better. And I would not be surprised if the top tier of the Big 12 has a bunch of 2-loss teams. It's just how it goes.
Yep.
The ACC is going to be even worse.
And we're going to cover that next week, baby. Get ready for the Florida State Seminoles. Actually, there is a little interesting nugget there with Florida State. DJU going up against Clemson, right? Well, you're holding up the U, Miami. I don't know.
That's for SMU, right, Beef?
No, that's for Stanford.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, as always, if you missed anything, once again, our summer ball podcasts are available at foxphlgambler.com. Joe Tansey 90, Ryan Coyle 35. He goes by the name of Beef. You need to get the beef in the avatar there, the handle, excuse me. I am Sean Brace. Everybody, good luck on all of your plays. And once again, the countdown is on. College football right around the corner.